The movie starts with a man named Frank Martin. Frank used to be a special operations soldier, but now he works as a driver and a skilled mercenary. He lives in southern France and is known as the Transporter because of his job. Frank is getting ready to transport 3 men from a private bank to a different location, as per their contract. However, these clients are armed bank robbers. Frank doesn't mind this because he just focuses on doing his job and getting paid. Frank follows 3 strict rules when he's transporting: never change deals, never ask for names, and never open packages. When Frank sees that there are 4 robbers instead of 3, he refuses to take them. This is because the deal was for 3 people only. The leader of the robbers points a gun at Frank to threaten him, but Frank stays calm and sticks to the contract. He explains that the extra weight would affect his carefully planned escape, so he won't drive them. With the police getting closer, the leader kills one of his men and pushes him out of the car to match the agreement. Frank then drives away quickly. Frank is a very skilled driver. He can navigate through narrow streets and avoid obstacles to escape the police. He gets the robbers to their destination safely. The leader is very happy with Frank's driving and offers him more money to take them to Avignon. Frank refuses and decides to go back to his home on the French Riviera. When Frank gets home, he cleans his car and changes its license plate. He has a secret cupboard with many fake plates that he uses for his work. He watches the news on TV and sees that the robbers, his former clients, have been caught while trying to escape with another driver. Later, a local police inspector named Tarconi comes to Frank's house. He asks Frank about his black BMW, which looks just like the car the robbers used. But since Tarconi has no proof against Frank, he eventually leaves. Soon after, Frank got a call from a new client needing his services. That evening, Frank met the man and made a deal to deliver a 50-pound package to an American named Darren Betancourt. Frank asked for $40,000 up front, and the man agreed. The next day, the package was loaded into Frank's trunk. While changing a flat tire and taking out the spare tire, Frank noticed the package was moving. Realizing someone was inside, Frank broke his 3rd rule, opened the package, and found a Chinese woman tied up and gagged. Frank gave the woman a drink and continued driving. On the way, the woman banged on the trunk. When Frank removed her gag, she told him her name was Lai and that she needed to pee. Feeling sorry for her, Frank let her out of the trunk. Lai tried to escape, so Frank had to catch her. As Frank was taking Lai back to the car, 2 police officers saw them. Frank knocked out the officers and put them in the trunk with Lai, who had fainted. After a long drive, Frank arrived at his destination and delivered the package to Betancourt as promised. When asked if he opened the package, Frank lied and said he hadn't. As he was leaving, Betancourt offered Frank another job to deliver a suitcase on the way back to Frank's home. Frank agreed. On the way, Frank stopped to eat and buy drinks for the policeman in his trunk. As he returned to his car, it suddenly exploded, killing the policeman inside. The briefcase Betancourt gave him had a bomb, meant to kill Frank to keep him quiet about the package. Angry and seeking revenge, Frank went back to Betancourt's place and fought his men, injuring and killing several of them. Frank stole a car to escape and found Lai tied up in the back seat. On the road, Frank let Lai out, still tied and gagged, but soon felt sorry for her and came back to pick her up. Frank took her to his house, gave her food and a place to rest for the night, and asked Lai to leave the next day. That night, while Frank is sleeping, Lai secretly looks through his belongings. She finds out that Frank used to be an Air Force soldier and is highly trained. She realizes Frank is actually a good person. At the same time, Betancourt visits one of his injured men in the hospital. He asks who attacked his home. When he learns it was Frank, Betancourt kills his man to prevent any information about him and his illegal activities from getting to the police. The next morning, Lai makes breakfast for Frank. Tarconi comes to Frank's house again, suspecting him after finding his car burned nearby with 2 dead policemen in the trunk. Frank tells Tarconi he was in the area and that his car was stolen. Tarconi doesn't believe him and keeps questioning him. Lai then appears, saying she is a chef and Frank's new girlfriend, supporting his alibi. With no evidence to link Frank to the crime, Tarconi leaves. Afterward, Frank tells Lai to leave his house and his life. Soon after, Betancourt and his men attack Frank's house with gunfire. Frank quickly hides Lai in a safe place. Betancourt's men then fire missiles to destroy the house and kill Frank and Lai. They barely escape and swim to a nearby safe house using Frank's emergency diving gear. The next day, Frank and Lai are called to the police station to talk to Inspector Tarconi about the attack on Frank's house. Tarconi questions Frank about who attacked and his connection to them. Frank says he was swimming in the sea with Lai at the time and doesn't know who did it. Tarconi is skeptical, but their meeting is interrupted when the police commissioner calls for Tarconi. Lai uses the chance to look at Tarconi's computer for information about Betancourt, which she shares with Frank. Without enough evidence, Tarconi lets them go. Frank, who Betancourt thinks is dead, wants to end the conflict. He plans to rebuild his villa and start a new life, advising Lai to avoid further danger. Lai then tells Frank that Betancourt is a human trafficker with 400 Chinese people, including her father and siblings, trapped in shipping containers. He plans to sell them into slavery. Moved by her story, Frank decides to help Lai rescue her family. Frank and Lai then head to Betancourt's office. When they arrive, Frank immediately punches Betancourt and points a gun at him, while Lai searches for files about the container with 400 Chinese people, including her family. Betancourt tells Frank that Lai's father, Kwai, is also a human trafficker and Betancourt's partner. Frank feels betrayed by Lai. However, when Kwai arrives with his men, Lai points a gun at her father. But under threat, she obeys her father's orders and lowers her weapon. Kwai's men capture Frank, and Betancourt tells Frank that there are only 395 Chinese in the container. Meanwhile, Tarconi, who finds information about Betancourt on his computer, rushes to Betancourt's office and finds Frank unconscious. When Tarconi arrives, Kwai and Betancourt accuse Frank of kidnapping Lai and trying to blackmail them. Tarconi orders his men to arrest Frank and put him in jail. After Frank wakes up, Tarconi asks him what happened. Frank explains everything, including the hundreds of Chinese people held in containers to be sold as slaves by Betancourt and Lai's father. Tarconi realizes that Frank can solve the case faster than the police and helps Frank escape by pretending to be a fake hostage and freeing him. That evening, Frank, prepared for action, tracks Betancourt and his gang to the docks in Marseille, where they are loading the containers onto trucks. Frank is discovered, leading to a fierce fight and shootout with Betancourt's men. Frank tries to stop the truck by jumping on it, but gets into trouble when Betancourt's men knock him out. He then faces Kwai's men, who attack him with sharp weapons, and Betancourt's best fighter, who is tough to beat. Using all his fighting skills, Frank defeats them all. But when Betancourt sends more armed men, Frank is forced to escape by diving into the sea. After that, Frank steals an old car and chases the truck carrying the container. But by morning, the car breaks down on a remote country road. Frank sees a small airplane flying towards a farm and rushes after it. He points a gun at the plane's owner and orders him to fly close to the highway to follow the truck carrying the containers. When they get close enough, Frank parachutes and lands on one of the trucks. He quickly knocks out the truck driver. But Betancourt is there and tries to stop Frank. After a long and fierce fight, Frank finally kills Betancourt by throwing him out of the moving truck, along with some of his men. Frank then takes control of the truck and drives it to safety. Just as Frank is about to get out, Kwai points a gun at him and leads him to the edge of a cliff, planning to kill Frank to hide his crimes. Kwai also orders his men to kill Lai because she disobeyed him and helped the people who were to be sold as slaves. However, Lai saves Frank by reluctantly shooting her father, killing him. Inspector Tarconi arrives with the police, and they rescue the people trapped in the containers. They congratulate Frank on his work. The film ends. So the moral of the story is never trust a package, always be nice to pilots, and if all else fails, just parachute onto a truck and hope for the best.